I don't know what stopped you talking, but I can guess. They're coming. They are fast, faster than you could believe. Don't turn your back. Don't look away, and don't...
Pull to open.
Pull to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
They're creatures of the abstract. They live off potential energy.
What in God's name are you talking about?
Trust me, just nod when he stops for breath.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest, an enterprise, an endeavor to watch all the episodes of the television program with an M and an E at the end of Doctor Who in random order. I am Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and the guy over my shoulder is certain David Tennant, who will be joining us later. But no, we are here at a very exciting time for our show. It's a very special episode. But yes, we are a couple of guys who go on this random journey through Who stories rather than Who episodes, and we've arrived at a doozy of a story. Pete, where were we? Where were we?
Well,
before we know where we are, we must know where we came from.
No spoilers. Well, we're also about spoilers, but it's you got to give you the context. They've got to lead up to it. It is the journey we've been on recently. So previously on Pull to Open, we a few episodes ago were at one of the legendary stories of the program. It was from series 1 way back in 2005. It was an episode you might remember called Dalek. Just huge. It was a big sort of moment in the podcast because we'd been anticipating getting to that one. It was huge. It was a great commentary. We had a good time talking about it. So then we got zipped to another era of New Who, and we chatted a little bit about the Beast Below.
Yes.
Perhaps not quite so beloved episode, but very interesting to sort of see that in sort of the new sort of Moffat era, whereas Dalek was sort of at the beginning of the Russell T. Davies era.
And we do kind of like it when they kind of balance out, right? The good ones, the really good ones, and the so-so ones.
Yeah,
which is what we had there with those two. Anyway,
you got to pace yourself. It's all about it's all about the pacing. It's all about getting things in the proper order. Because we also just needed a quick interlude back into Classic Who, back to the very beginning, and we talked about Planet of Giants. And I think we talk occasionally in our podcast, well, all the time in our podcast, about what the randomizer is doing in terms of taking us to various episodes. And what I didn't think of at the time was I believe it was teasing us with the Planet of Giants because the season 2 Blu-rays are not out yet, right? Oh. So we had to actually watch that on BritBox.
Yes.
And I think it's just really anticipating that. So it's kind of a thing I thought of after the fact. But
I didn't know that. Yeah, perfect timing.
So I was trying to
the randomizer sponsored by BBC Enterprises.
Yeah, well, I think that's the Christmas season. We're here in the middle of the Christmas season recording this. And so it's like, hey, some holiday gift giving, might want to do that. So that's what I think it was trying to tell us. But it was all setting the stage for this week's episode. It's been a big lead up to where we're at now, which is Series 3, Episode 10, Blink.
Oh my God. Pete, I can't believe it. I can't believe we're here so soon. I mean, regular listeners know Day of the Doctor is my favorite. Blink is my second favorite. I'm exactly aligned with the 2014 Doctor Who magazine poll in that. And now we've done the two, we're about to have done, right. Get me my timey-wimey tenses right, the two best shows in that we could have come across. I mean, is this it? Is Pull to Open over? Should we shut it down? Is it Pull to close?
Exactly. You're absolutely right. I mean, longtime listeners will know, like, I think it was a little over a year ago, where we got a little worried we were burning through too much like epic Doctor Who.
That's right. We did a mini episode on that. We did a mini episode worrying about it.
And now I'm more worried about it.
Yeah.
We've just done Dalek. We're about to do Blink. We did Day of the Doctor about a year ago. We're not even halfway through the canon. Like we've got about 60-70% to go, something like that.
Let me tell you something, dear listeners. There is a heavy weight that comes with the pull to open journey, and the heavy weight comes in these episodes. Like, I remember we had this feeling right before Genesis of the Daleks. Like, we're
right.
not worthy. How are we ready on this rainy Saturday morning to talk about one of these stone cold classics of Doctor Who? Can we do it justice? Can I do a TLDW that will summarize Blink in 1 minute and do it justice, because that will live forever as a TikTok, So,
absolutely.
it's a
And
little, it's a heavy honor.
It is. It very much is. And we also need to put on our journalism hats a little bit, I think, with these. And, even though they're very highly regarded and deservedly so in many ways, I mean, we need to come at it with a certain pair of eyes and sort of think about, does it deserve it? What does it mean in the context today? Is it as impactful as it was at the time? And we'll go into all of that with Blink.
We will not blink when it comes to the flaws in Blink, and there are flaws.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is one of those things. I think we might have to go back into the Codex at some point, because now we're kind of like, like it's kind of like when you have any genre, any TV show, things emerge as the sort of all-time classics, and then after that top list, you sort of pick whatever you want. Like, it depends on taste.
Right.
So I'd have a hard time thinking at Beyond, Dalek, Day of the Doctor, Blink, like what's outside of that. That's your top 3 probably. What's your top 5? And am I missing something key? Because I feel
Genesis
like we've got
the Daleks is certainly up there. We've done that.
I'm thinking just with New Who.
Oh yeah, New Who.
New Who specifically. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Listeners, write in. Let us know what some people like 11th Hour. I mean, a lot of people do. Some people super into the Master trilogy from the 3rd season.
Indeed, which immediately follows this. Yeah,
the Girl in the
Silence in the Library,
which we've
done. And we're also burning through the Moffat RTD collaborations. And we've talked on the show about how that was the golden age of Who, when they worked together. And this is very much another example of that. And I don't know how many are left.
Yeah. We'll figure it out, and this is probably inspiring our next mini episode.
Indeed.
But guys, we're going to get to the commentary on the episode itself sooner or later. But before we do that, of course, we will go into the pull to open feedback loop.
Yes, because this is a podcast.
Yeah, it is.
Podcasts thrive on reviews. Leave us a review. Sorry, I'm stepping on your lines, Pete.
No, you go. I think you did it.
Yeah, that's it. That's basically it.
We love reviews. They really help the show. And if you leave a review, I would love to read your review out on the podcast. And I have one of those. I have a review from I don't know if it's a new listener, but it is someone who left a review, and I will, here it is.
All right.
But the handle, by the way, is Sheik's hashtag. Sheik's hashtag. Yeah, I've got nothing. And the title is Exploring Doctor Who in the Most Appropriate Way, an extremely timey-wimey order. Very apt for this week's episode. 5 stars. I found this podcast at the perfect time. I have just recently found a rebirth of my obsession with Doctor Who, spurred on by the announcements of RTD and Tennant returning, and had been looking for new podcasts to listen to. So my joy skyrocketed when I found a clip of Pull to Open on TikTok. I started by randomly watching through episodes from New Who, but then decided to watch through all the episodes in the order released. It is absolutely wonderful to not only hear fans of the show talk about some of my favorite episodes that I am incredibly familiar with, but also to be more introduced to classic Who. Yes. I do not see how anyone that listens to this would not be a fan. For Doctor Who fans, it is a wonderful look at nearly 60 years of one of our favorite shows, and for non-fans, it is an interesting introduction to the show that may spur them on to watch it. For the past 2 weeks, I've been listening through this podcast constantly while driving, at work, while doing homework, and playing games. I am now very excited to watch each story each week along with the podcast.
Oh,
Amazing. This is such a good review. I love it because it's exactly how we're trying to reach people, honestly.
exactly.
He's kind of ticking all the boxes here in that.
Sheik's hashtag is hashtag awesome because, yes, we do want to. I don't want to say like we want you to get to eat your vegetables, but that's kind of what it feels like sometimes, right? We have these incredibly meaty episodes about the stories you know and love, like Dalek and like Blink. And what perfect timing to be doing Blink because so many people are interested because David Tennant is coming back. And here's one of Tennant's top episodes, even though he's not in it. But also, like, we do season that a little bit, even if the randomizer is like, let's eat all the meat now. We do season it quite a lot with the vegetables, as it were, of the classic show, which are rewarding every time we get into them. There's something that we pull out. There's something that we see in Who history for the first time. There's the real world history that spins off it. We go off in all directions from, like, you know, and there's never a dull pull to open because we always find something, even in the not stone cold classics like Planet of Giants.
You know, it's funny. I think we've just decided that if you're a Doctor Who vegetarian, you're a fan of the classic series.
I mean,
New Who is dead to you. You're one of those. It's Who in name only. A wino.
The classic series, like meatballs and vegetables, very tight clusters of, like, you know.
There's some soy in there, man. There's some good soy. High in protein, but yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to think, like, I'm going too far with this analogy, but has there ever been plant creatures as the villain in New Who? I've got to think about it because it's happened several times in Old Who.
We're going to have to judge now if is everything a vegetable episode, because we've had the weed. We had the weed in Fury from the Deep. That was very nutritious. You know, lots of protein in that seaweed, but also it's seaweed. It's hard to get people to eat it.
What's Doctor Who's Soylent Green episode? I don't know. Maybe it's still yet to come. RTD, call us.
Well, surely that's the two doctors with all the cannibalism in it.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Sheik's hashtag, for that amazing review.
Yeah,
We're really happy you're here with us on this journey. And you too, listener, can be with us here on this journey. You obviously are because you're listening to me, but go ahead and leave a review over on the Apple Podcast Store. Which is the best place to leave reviews, or anywhere you're listening, if it can take reviews.
And you know what? If you want to participate in this experiment in randomness that we are essentially conducting by going randomly through the entire history of Doctor Who, leave what you want the randomizer to do next in your review. Because, you know, what we're discovering with the randomizer is you really don't get anything you don't ask for. And it listens in strange ways. Like last week, I don't want to get too far into the question of why did the randomizer take us here, but I will say, if you listen to Planet of Giants podcast, we did talk about cats blinking. Don't blink in front of the cat. I think I actually used those words, and lo and behold, here's what happens. So if you leave a review with an episode that you'd like us to go to, maybe that will be enough for the randomizer to take us there.
Oh, wow. That's great. And speaking of reviews of episodes, we like to call for emoji reviews, or rather emoji titles.
Oh, God, do we have another one?
It's an ongoing thing. It's actually kind of becoming our thing. And it's always kind of been our thing, but we've had sort of a density of them lately.
And I've got so many of them wrong.
Well, you've got so many of them right, too.
That's true.
Some hints here and there.
The glass is half full.
We got some more. They came in. It's actually one of our reliable providers of these, Dalton 1963, you may have remembered, which he almost stumped you. But we've got 3 more. And I need your help with a couple of them because I'm not sure what they are. So this is going to be, we may come up, snake eyes on some of these if we can't get them.
You know what I've realized my problem with this segment is? It's taking so much mental power to just see the emojis in my head from having them described to me that what I need is an emoji robot from Smile to come up and just sort of present me with the emojis. I'd be like,
It would be. I wish there was I'm looking for a way to share my screen at the Zencaster, and I can't.
No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right.
I'll see if I can do it. Oh, all right. It's all right. Let's get to the first one. All right. The first one. Here it goes. It is a audio icon, with kind of one of those cone woofers and sounds coming out of it.
The sound of something, yes.
Yeah. And then there is a drum and another drum.
Sound of drums.
So that one, there it is.
We have it every week. How could we not get that one?
And we're going to move on to number 2. Well, way to go, by the way.
Thank you.
Now, this is 3 emojis, all the same emoji, and it is indifferent face with dotted lines around the face.
Okay.
So it's like, you know what I mean? It's basically expressionless. So you just have the flat mouth.
Right.
So it's basically that.
It's the one that's dotted lines, like
dotted
a ghost.
line around it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what this is. The 3 doctor ghosts.
So they're all ghosts.
Yes, exactly. Is that what it is? 3 ghosts?
Is it Army of Ghosts? No. Is it? Can't be the 3 doctors.
No, you said
Power
it.
Of 3. What?
Army of Ghosts, right?
Yeah, you
Isn't
think
that
so?
what that one is?
Yeah, it could be.
Oh, wow! Because it's 3. 3 could be an army.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't do as many emoji as there were Cybermen. Sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen Army of Ghosts.
There it is.
Could be that. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
it. Let's go with that one.
Oh.
Not bad. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure
All
about that
right.
one. Okay.
You're boosting my
doing great.
confidence. You're
You're killing it. All right. Now, last one. Here it is. Negative sign or M dash. It's basically just that. Maybe it's just a dash. Then it's it's a male emoji signaling cross-checking. I'm trying to think of the arms up here. Excuse me.
So M dash arms crossed.
Right.
Yes.
And then it's like a sine wave. So like, it's a squiggle. But it looks like a very...
Something not wave. I'm thinking
wave.
reversing... No wave. I'm thinking he's reversing the polarity of the neutron flow there in that.
What's the dash? Negative? Is it negative or is it dash?
Yeah, the minus. of the waves. I mean, you could almost anything you come up with there would be a rejected title for like season 26.
I think we have to start with the wave. Like, what is that? Is there anything with wave or
sine?
Frequency? I don't know. I'm coming up blank here. The cross-checking thing is really, if that's a no,
that's a no. It's usually a no,
right?
Or not, or no way, Jose, or.
I would typically think that you would use the circle with the red circle with the cross out for no.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, and I think you're right. I think the minus sign or M dash, not knowing what that is, or not knowing what it's supposed to be. Is it minus or is it dash? Neither of those really bring Doctor Who titles to mind. But this is the great thing about doing it with 302 story titles. It is literally impossible unless you just swallowed a spreadsheet to keep them all in your head at once.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I'm cheating right now because I'm actually
you're looking at the Codex.
I'm looking at the Codex. I've opened it up prematurely, but I still am not. I'm just skimming it. I don't know. I thought for a second the almost people, but
the almost people.
Sure. Yeah, the wave doesn't work though.
Yeah.
Is that?
Wait. What's the almost people? Is that a hidden story I don't know about?
Oh no, that was Rebel Flesh Part 2.
Oh,
remember that?
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to. This would be a 3-hour podcast if we did it. We're going to say we failed this one, Dalton. We're going to get back to it.
Sorry, Dalton.
Go ahead and let us know what it was, and once you hear this, and we'll. And
listeners, please also write in, save us our blushes. If you are currently screaming at the podcast that obviously it's this, we're such idiots. How did we not see this? Please write in. Let us know. Tweet at us.
We also
TikTok
need to know the right place to put it in our codex. But yeah, keep them coming. We love the brain teasers, and we'd love to read them out on the show. All right. Speaking of stuff, you can also leave them at a place called YouTube. So YouTube continues to grow. It's going strong. We have our new episodes posting there every Saturday. We're continuing to put up the ones we hadn't cut to video before from quote-unquote season 2 of Pull to Open. And those are going well. Our shorts and our plot summaries are all there too. And we're getting some great comments. Keep them coming. Tell people about YouTube, especially if they like their podcast with a little video, like to see who they're listening to. Sometimes you need to know these are real people and not just bots.
Yeah. And you get all these Easter eggs like David here telling us not to blink in the background.
I was gonna bring that up. You look like you have someone looking over your shoulder this week, which is
indeed.
Could all use that. Also on social, TikTok continues to grow. We are at Pull to Open on TikTok. We're getting great energy from our recent videos. Lots of discussion on our videos from The Beast Below. We actually had kind of a viral hit with our clip where you talked about how the plot of that episode may be an unsubtle reference or an unsubtle metaphor, rather, about the British Empire.
The British Empire.
Something been going on for 300 years and the British probably needs to apologize for.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that went viral. A little bit of politics. As a British historian, I couldn't let that one go. So glad that it's spurring some conversation.
Yeah, and so I wanted to highlight a comment where someone seemed to take a point of view that I had. So it's basically from one of our commenters, Morg IE. Anyway, that's how it's spelled. And they say, yeah, I think it has more to do with the public choosing to ignore all the horrendous decisions the government has made come election time. And I was like, yes, that was my thought. I liked seeing this, and there was another comment that was similar. So yes, I'm choosing these to congratulate myself. But it is like, I remember when I thought about that, I didn't like, I kind of liked your analogy better just because it is a little more pointed. Whereas mine seemed a little bit generic, but generic stuff, that's okay too. And so thank you for bolstering both my theory, Morgery, as well as a little bit of self-confidence, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, it is. It's a both and situation. We're definitely right. It's definitely part of it, but you got to think of what is the thing that Starship UK is specifically ignoring? What length of time is it ignoring it for? Election by election by election. It's still, there's the overall systemic thing. But yeah, thanks for engaging with us on that, and keep them coming.
Cool. And I just want to highlight one more, just because it was an amusing one, and it's something we didn't, talk about much in the pod. It's from Unearthly Doctor, and they say the fact Northern Ireland was still on that ship, that cafe into the future rubbed me the wrong way. Which I thought, that's kind of an interesting thing this episode sort of consciously did. It was like the Starship UK and, Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Okay.
It's sort of not something that we've ever thought. This is another thing that sort of makes this instantly dated post-Brexit, right? I think post-Brexit, a lot of people started to realize that maybe Northern Ireland would be a lot better off with the South, and the numbers for any potential referendum started to turn after Brexit. So I definitely would suggest that it is, if you remade that today, you would have a United Ireland spaceship, and Scotland would have gone its own way, and maybe it's an England and Wales spaceship if the Welsh can't get it together to leave in time. But cool. Starship England.
Maybe something else happens in the far future after that, and then it sort of brings Northern Ireland back in the fold. I don't know. You can make up a lot of things to do these retcons, but thanks for the comment, Unearthly Doctor. Really great to see the engagement. Also follow us on Twitter and Instagram, where there's more happening there too. We're at Pull to Open 63. Loving all the conversation. Keep it coming. All right. Well, I think we need to start talking about Blink at some point, unless there's any other business, which I don't think there is, because we've just passed the 59th anniversary of Doctor Who.
Happy 59th birthday, Doctor.
Happy 59th, but barely a whisper from the show. A lot of people were thinking they would drop at least a little bit of news or something special, but all we got, as far as I could tell, were a couple of very short videos of David Tennant and Catherine Tate just saying Happy Doctor Who Day.
Which is fine, and we may find out once we examine those messages that there's cryptic information buried within the framework of the code. No, I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I think that we are just entering a long and fallow period. You know, they have teased us enough, as our wonderful reviewer pointed out. It's exciting. It's exciting to be a Who fan again because Tennant is back, and that sort of instantly makes Who cool in the wider culture again.
Right.
I watched Blink with a friend who reminded them that David Tennant is coming back, and it's sort of you have this sort of pride in being a Who fan again. Whether or not Tennant is your favorite Doctor, he is certainly the modern world's most widely known.
Right.
From Modern Who. So it's good stuff, and I'm excited to get to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing I saw in the world of Doctor Who news was that there is a rumor, and I'm reluctant to even bring it up, that Phoebe Waller-Bridge of Fleabag fame
right,
may be doing something for the show. It's a little vague on what it is. Presumably she'd just be writing an episode or doing something along the lines of what Neil Gaiman has done, sort of not just doing one episode, but doing something that is clearly like a special episode in some way.
Yeah.
Don't know if there's any truth to that. Don't know.
It's it's from the Daily Mail, so take it with a grain of salt. But also, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Do you remember she was briefly rumored to be the next Doctor when Jodie came along?
I don't remember that, to be honest with you, but I do remember when there was a lot of they started to talk about who would take over from Chris Chibnall. Some people were saying Phoebe Waller-Bridge would be a great choice, but
she would.
The issue there being she kind of has her own stuff, like
she's got a lot of her own projects going on. Yeah,
running Doctor Who is a big deal, and if you're someone like Phoebe Waller-Bridge who's kind of already made it and already have your own projects going on, it's just seems like, would you be willing at this point in her career to commit to like a 3 to 5 year stint doing this other IP? It just seems really unlikely. So I think that wasn't much more than wishful thinking on the part of some fans, as much as she could bring a really great sort of creative bent to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see it. I'd love to see a season of Doctor Who written and a season arc created by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Honestly, I don't think that she wants to do it. I think she would see the burnout that you get. It was evident in RTD and Moffat and Chibnall when they left. It's like this show takes a lot of your creative energy. You have to be really committed to it. And love Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Don't know how huge of a Who fan she is.
Yeah, that's the other one, right? She'd be if she did do it, she'd be the first one showrunner in the new era to not really be a fan of the show. So again, I don't know. I just
not maniacal, like writing into Doctor Who magazine as a kid kind of level of fandom.
Exactly.
Which the three were.
Anyway, interesting rumor. It's interesting that it comes on this is probably pure coincidence, like a few days after or right around the same time that the trailer for the 5th and presumably final Indiana Jones movie has dropped, and she obviously has a big role in that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just her people trying to hype her up. I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, it's possible she's writing an episode. It's interesting fact about Blink. Not to get too deep into it yet before the TLDW, but it was written while Stephen Moffat was creating a show called Jekyll. So he barely even remembers writing Blink, right? That it was so fast. It's definitely that you want something done, give it to a busy person. I imagine Phoebe Waller-Bridge is so on fire right now. She could churn out a great episode and not even remember that she did it.
Oh, man. Yeah. That title is having multiple meanings already. Just boom, Blink, you miss it. Anyway, interesting stuff. Let us know what you're thinking. Feel free to comment about it at some point. We might read your comment out on the podcast.
Yes, please do.
All right. Speaking of TLDW, I think it's time.
It's time.
It is time to transition, guys, into talking about the episode of Blink. And we always start our commentaries by summarizing the plot in record time of the story in question. And for New Who, we allocate a full minute for every episode that is in the usual format, which is roughly 45 to 50 minutes. And the person doing TLDW this week, as we've already said, is you, sir.
And this is a tough one because Blink, my God, it is, we'll get into this as well, but it's like a TARDIS in that it contains, it's much bigger on the inside. It contains so many stories within it. So many ways that I could fall down rabbit holes, as we often do in TLDW, but also like just following the actual plot is a rabbit hole. So
and everything intersects in weird, unexpected ways that you feel probably the need to explain as you do it. So I would just encourage, don't worry about the intersection so much. If I had a tip on this one, just throw it all out there.
Can I just say it's a big timey wimey wibbly bobbly ball of stuff, and that's it. That's my summary.
Boom! The 3-second summary. We've done it. Okay, let's cut right to it. No, you can't do that.
Damn it!
We're gonna do it for real.
Am I allowed to blink? Is my question. Am I allowed to blink while doing this?
Tell you what, I won't.
Okay. All right, I'm ready. I'm doing it on the fly.
Right, here we go. The official pull to open summary of Blank begins in 3, 2, 1, go.
So, Sally Sparrow and her friend Kathy Nightingale are investigating a mansion called Western Drumlands because Sally received a mysterious message from the doctor there. But Kathy encounters an angel and she's sent back into 1920. And then there's a message for Sally Sparrow at the door. It's a letter from Kathy who's just died saying, this is my grandson. And so she goes off to tell her brother, Kathy's brother, Larry Nightingale, who runs a DVD store, has got all these DVD Easter eggs of the Doctor, 17 of them. They turn out to be Sally Sparrow's DVDs, but she doesn't know that until she goes to the police to tell Detective Inspector Shipton, who then is captured by the Angels himself, sent back into the past in 1969, puts the Easter eggs on the DVDs, which Sally and Larry then take to the house to Western Drumland, and they escape the Angels. The Angels have the blue box, but Sally has the key. She sends the TARDIS back to the Doctor, and the Angels are looking at each other forever, and that's it. The Doctor Sally's folder a year later.
Not bad, though. Not bad.
Ooh.
You got it in about a minute, 3 seconds.
Almost got to the folder, the bootstrap paradox.
I don't think I've ever heard you talk faster for a TLDW. You did it. You packed so much in there. That was pretty good. That was a very dense one. I think if you did a word count, it was probably a record for a single New Who episode. So great job.
You know what I'm realizing we should do for these DWs is I should wear a heart rate monitor when I'm doing it. My heart is pounding right now.
That would pounding. We have to. Oh, that's a great idea. I've got an Apple Watch, so yeah, we could do that. We got to start doing that.
Oh God, yeah. Let me. You talk, Pete, about anything that I missed out while I check out what my current heart rate is.
I don't know what you did list. I was
113 BPM, Pete. That's this got me into an exercise zone.
Honestly, for the first little bit, I was probably a little out of not 100% paying attention to the exact words you were saying because I was trying to focus on not blinking, and I succeeded for about 3 seconds, I think. And then I tried to do it again, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just not doing this. So eagle-eyed viewers on YouTube are like, hey, wait a minute. You said you wouldn't blink. No, I blinked a lot. The Angels got me. I'm now way back in the past.
Please zoom and enhance on Pete's eyes in slow motion as they blink.
So let's get into it. I mean, this is such a legendary episode for so many reasons. Obviously, it's the first appearance of the Weeping Angels, which, we could get into that right away. But the Angels are one of the most innovative, interesting, creepy monsters that Doctor Who has ever come up with. They were basically an instant classic. And the comparison I would make with the Angels, and I'm glad we already did Silence of the Library, was be with the Vashta Narada, where I even said at the time, I think it's a great idea for a monster, but you never quite see them. And then you have these rules with the shadows that make them a little too powerful. And it's a great idea. It's really creepy. It didn't ruin the episode, but there's a reason the Vashta Nerada have not come back, I believe.
Well, it's interesting that you should go straight there, because did you know that when Moffat came up with the idea of the Weeping Angels, that was his first idea for where they could slot in to his scripts, was in Silence of the Library, was in place of the Vashta Nerada.
Okay.
So Moffat had basically the idea for the story behind Blink, which was what Sally Sparrow did on her summer vacation, which was a story for Doctor Who Annual. But that didn't have the Weeping Angels in. The Weeping Angels came from, he was just on vacation somewhere. He saw angels in a graveyard, I believe.
Right.
Thought how creepy they were, came up with the idea there and then, thought that they were going to go into Silence of the Library, then volunteered to, quote-unquote, jump on the hand grenade of season 3, as in do the Dr. Light episode, which up until that point, nobody had liked the Dr. Light episodes. So Moffat's like, okay, I'll do this one, and I'll use the Weeping Angels for it. So yeah, he had to come up with the Vashta Nerada as an Angels substitute. And yeah, they're not quite as good.
Yeah, they're not quite as good, because I think once you lend a little bit of thought to it, it kind of falls apart. Whereas the Angels, to sort of complete the comparison, they make sense in your head. The rules are very clear and they work. I mean, like within the confines of a TV show where, there's always things you can pick at, but the way they're defeated, or even just not necessarily defeated, but stopped, by looking at them, is such a genius thing.
Yeah.
Because it's very clear how you do it, but it's also a thing that you can never sustain. It's impossible to sustain it. So in other words, built into how they work is a way to slow them down, but never really fully defeat them. And it's almost like I know people say that it kind of writes itself. Like, it's like, holy cow, it's just incredible. Like, I got to say, now this is a thing that every single time I watch Blink, every single time, I cannot help but try not to blink.
Agreed.
When the characters are trying not to blink. It's just you just do it. You just like, okay, let's see if I can do it. And it's just such a genius idea.
It is. It's one of those episodes that of the new show that you think this could have been a classic Doctor Who story, and it would have been a stone cold classic, because there's nothing in it that's expensive.
Right.
There's
that's true.
They do replicate the number of angels, and they do use CGI to freeze them in place, because in case you didn't know, and I forget this every time, they were not stone statues. They were people in costumes.
Right. Well, two of them were stone statues, or some statues of some kind, in that they made two statues for the actual hands in front of faces pose, and the one where it's pointing. So in those, when you see the angel sort of pointing, it's a statue. But for all the other moments where their hands are a little bit down, certainly when they're advancing on Sally and Larry at the end, and they're sort of vamped out mode, those are people. Those are a couple of actresses.
Yeah, and it's astonishing that they managed to say that still. But anyway, point being that you could have filmed this in 1963, right? There's nothing that could have stopped it.
Yeah, no. Absolutely.
It's such a genius idea for building suspense, to your point, exactly, that you if you have that, and the horror movie music kind of writes itself for this episode as well, right? The high strings that we get, it's so obvious. It's so good at building suspense. And it's just built around the human need to blink, to shut your eyes, several times a second.
Well, and I love the whole conceit that you don't know how they move, what they look like when they're moving. We can talk about what they did in later episodes that kind of, frankly, almost ruins the idea. But here, you're always imagining something worse than what's actually being shown. And again, built into the entire concept is that you never see it. They will never, ever show you what the angels look like when people aren't looking at them, because you couldn't do it. It would ruin the whole thing. The angels, I mean, obviously, for all the reasons we just stated, are a classic. I mean, it was probably inevitable that they brought them back.
They're also it's a classic in terms of the educational nature of Doctor Who. I mean, the fact that that this is a very interesting, imaginative way to explore an actual fact of quantum physics, right? That the
That's
act
true.
of
That's true.
observing a particle changes the particle. We know that our status in quantum physics experiments is like our observation of an experiment will change the experiment.
Well,
So
there's also like another part of quantum physics that expands on that, which is called decoherence, which is an explanation for how the macro world comes out of the micro world. And it's more complicated than this, but it's essentially particles can observe each other. So like if a particle needs to know where another particle is to sort of interact properly, so in other words, like it takes away the thing where do you actually need a conscious person to look at a thing for a thing to be looked at? Not necessarily, but here is where I would like, even though that in a sense you might think ruins the angel concept, it doesn't. I think this is where the angels looking at each other resolution at the end makes it like that's like the same idea, I think. So it totally works.
Yeah, they are definitely looking at each other, even though they are stone, and that does explain that. So, how many? I would love to know how many kids watched this in 2008, and then like grew up to study quantum physics because it is
we're a ways away now.
The remit that is the remit of Doctor Who, that it gives us. We were just talking about meat along with the vegetables, right? But here is just one of the most wonderful examples of quantum physics turned into science fiction that I've ever seen in any medium ever.
Yeah,
and it surely inspired some of the kids hiding behind the sofa from the angels.
Yeah, it would be really hard to think of something. The only thing, I don't know if this was quantum inspired, but I think of the infinite improbability drive and Hitchhiker's Guide,
indeed,
which was a
Doctor
sort of
Who
a fun
alum,
take on
Douglas Adams,
randomness. Okay, so I want to get into this since we're going deep on the angels right off the bat.
Let's do it.
So that resolution, I think within Blink, with having the angels look at each other, really works, really makes sense. It's just kind of like this poetic end to the whole plot. However, does it work generally, especially considering we've seen now more angels in more episodes? Like, it's a weird thing to think about when you start thinking about angel society. And again, Blink is great because it doesn't really dwell on that at all. They're just monsters here, and there's no sort of what does an angel planet look like? Well, it's not relevant here. Well, it becomes relevant later. So how do we reconcile this? And maybe we don't need to, but it's fun to think about, with the idea that we've seen groups of angels in later episodes, like clearly within each other's field of view. How can a race like this even have a society if angels can freeze other angels just by looking at them? Does this work in any way?
I mean, there's a line in the episode that I'd forgotten until I rewatched it, where they get called the Lonely Assassins. And that's so evocative. And like a lot of things in Blink, it works because it sparks so much headcanon in the moment of saying, you're like, oh yeah, Lonely Assassins, they must have been, especially if they've been here since the beginning of the universe. It is, it's hard to reconcile later on. And I think part of the problem is that the way that Who treats the angels starts to get a bit sloppy. And you start to introduce new rules, like them coming through the TV screen, which I always thought was a step too far.
Well, I get why they did that, because you kind of get the idea, well, if to keep the angels in place, just put a camera in front of it, like a video camera, and keep it running all the time, and then it can never move, right? And then, that doesn't work because every image of an angel then becomes an angel, which gives them incredibly great reproductive powers. I'll say that.
I mean, all you really need, and Who hasn't really explored this yet, all you really need is a pair of security guards who've been trained to blink not in unison. Right?
Well, you need probably more than two, but yes.
Yeah, well, you rotate them through. Three for safety, 3 for redundancy, right? And just surround the angels at all times. Because that's one thing that gets me in Blink. It's like the Blink equivalent of why does nobody ever just go to the police? Why are Sally and Larry not trading off blinks at the end? right? Why are they not working together? To your point of like, how does angel society work together? Humans need to work together a bit better on the angel front as well.
I actually listened to the commentary on this one. I'm not sure if you did. So it has Stephen Moffat and Murray Gold, and Stephen Moffat doesn't address that directly. And I could sort of chalk that up to what you might call a lack of training, what you're identifying. But yes, that you think they would be thinking better on their feet. But they do talk about the idea of blinking one eye and doing that, which kind of works. But Stephen Moffat, I think, correctly said, like, you do eventually blink. Like, it actually doesn't quite work. Because
I sort of have to slow it down. Yeah.
Well, I do feel like at some point you're just kind of like you're going to have one eye closed and you're going to blink because your eyes aren't used to that. I do think they used that at some point in one of the later episodes. I'd sort of vaguely remembering Amy or someone doing the one eye other thing and trying to do it, and it probably would work for a few seconds, but it's not a reliable thing.
It's not, and you'd have problems with depth perception. You couldn't move and do that very well. But yeah, it's interesting. I want to focus more on Blink and just sort of the inconsistencies of angel logic within this episode, because we haven't really talked about the cold open. I did not fall in that rabbit hole during TLDW.
Good job.
But thank you. The cold open is this sort of improbable thing of Sally Sparrow uncovering wallpaper, a message from the Doctor under the wallpaper from 1969 that is just timed perfectly and keeps telling her to duck. And it's like, no, seriously, duck. And she finally does duck. A rock hits her. The angel is thrown at. But she's had her back to that angel all the time. So
right.
What are the rules here?
Okay, so this I'm guiding myself a little bit by what Moffat said on the commentary, as well as what I think makes sense. So in the commentary, he talks about like, why is it throwing a rock at her just generally? Well, because as someone, as a creature that is rendered immobile by simply being looked at, a good tactic at hunting people would be knocking them out first. So that they don't, they're simply unconscious and they can't look at anything. Indeed. So that's smart. And I would guess that even though they move super fast and there's always that chance, and I'll bet many angels this has happened to, because it does happen to at least one of them with respect to Kathy and others later. You're stopped at the last second, right? Because it's kind of like you would probably like, okay, I'm going to run up, and once that happens to you as an angel, the jig is up, like because that statue wasn't there before, someone's going to be staring at you, and yes, they might blink, but there's also a chance they'll just kind of get away. So what they've probably discovered over time is that, well, it's probably just better to throw the rock and you knock them out, or just use that in general, as opposed to doing what they would consider hand-to-hand. So that's my headcanon on why the angels aren't constantly just jumping up to people and like rendering, because otherwise it just doesn't work, right? Because there's probably, because we have peripheral vision, like I think the field with which they can actually do their thing is probably narrower than you would think, because if you see them in the peripheral vision, that still counts as seeing them. So they're going to have to really come up right behind your head and hope you don't even turn your head a little. And it works most of the time. But for those times that it doesn't, then you're screwed. Like then they know you're there and they're going to do everything they can to get away or stop you.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think that's the sort of the thing that stops me on a repeat viewing. The flaw that I see is this: it just doesn't. You don't quite get a sense within Blink of how fast do angels move. Like, what is the consistent speed? Because there are times when they're just like, when Larry and Sally are in the house, or in West John is at the end. By the way, why did they go back to that? That might be the other. Why don't you just go to the police moment? Why don't you stay out of the scary Scooby-Doo mansion?
I thought Sally Sparrow. She's like, meet me there with the DVD player.
Yes.
And it's a little like, why are you going there? Like, exactly. There's no real reason for it.
So the angels are already in the house, but for some reason they leave Sally and Larry oodles of time to set up this video and watch it and make jokes about it. And,
maybe they were off somewhere. And I guess if I'm reaching for explanations of why they went there, like she's trying to find the TARDIS as it's been taken, and it's the key to this. I mean, she has the key, so she's trying to find where it is, and this is the best lead she has.
Good point.
So that's again, it's kind of headcanon, but it makes some sense to me, even though she doesn't seem to consider the incredible danger she's going to be in, which she should know about by now.
And how does the TARDIS move from the police? It was in the police station, but then the angels get it and they bring it to the basement of West. How does that happen?
Angel movers.
Maybe. Maybe this is the Clara Splinter coming in. We'll get to her. But
I think you have to presume a certain amount of like superhuman strength on the part of the angels' part, right? They just basically grab the TARDIS and take it, and they can't get in it, but clearly that's what happened. So
they're very good at lifting with their knees. They evidently nobody. It's during the rainstorm, so nobody in this town is paying attention to them.
You have to headcanon it that they're in terms of, and also their speed, even though they're incredibly fast. You really need to like she blinks the statues. She sees the statues on the ledge across the way. She blinks and they're gone. I think you kind of have to assume a certain amount. They're just out of her field of view now. That like they haven't literally climbed up in a blink of an eye to the windows where she's at and got in those other poses. I think there needs to be a little bit of presumption that what we haven't seen, and yes, they are super fast, but they're not so fast that they can literally go around the world or whatever in a split second, which seems to be a little bit implied. So I think they're doing some of that, obviously, for scare to freak you out a little bit more, really convey how formidable they are, but really like it to really make it work in your head. I think you have to kind of dial back parts of this just a bit.
Yeah, I do love the idea of angel movers. And of course, if someone sees them out on the street, they're just like, they're all kind of holding this TARDIS.
Performance art. We've all seen that. It's like, those benches with the statues on them, which
it must be something. At the end. Must be something to do with that T-shirt I keep seeing. The angels have the blue box. It's obviously it's all tied in. It's all tied in. But I also love the idea that angel movers are a bit like, now remember, lift with your knees and nobody look at each other.
Put your blindfolds on.
We'll be stuck for another 1,000 years. Wear those damn blinkers.
Speaking of, you think they would have, how horses have blinds or
blinkers. Blinkers. They are called blinkers. It's perfect for this episode.
You'd think the angels, that would be just standard issue. They would have these really narrow blinkers on them so they can't see each other or something like that. To get away from the problem that obviously thwarts them at the end.
Yeah, they need some sort of special glasses that they wear that kind of just fuzz out other angels so they're not actually seeing them. Yeah. Like I'm thinking in Black Mirror, wasn't there that episode, the Christmas episode, where there's this world where you can just not see people. You can literally cancel them.
Yeah,
they go grey. Like the angels need that technology. Maybe that's how they're able to function together as a society.
Hey, don't give them ideas. I wanted to ask you. So
they've been around since the dawn of the universe. That's all. If they haven't come up with that idea yet, that's on them.
I felt like one of the freakiest things about the angels was simply their blank expressions. They're these statues and the eyes have no pupils. And toward the end, as we all know, they sort of vamp out. They get this crazy fang expression and they're like looking really scary, which is kind of cool the first time you see it. You're just like, whoa, it's a good little jump scare. But
it's the jump cut, yeah.
I do. Do you like that? I kind of feel like it's not needed. I feel like they're scary enough, and just having a statue there staring at you with its blank expression would have been fine. It doesn't ruin the angels at all, but I just thought it was a little too much maybe upon repeated viewing. I don't know. What did you think?
No, I disagree. I think you absolutely need to up the ante to make this the scariest thing ever. you need to have the jump scare, because here is a legitimate reason for jump scares. You don't always get a legitimate reason in horror. You have to really, but here, like the use of the light bulb at the end to create jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, it really just does have to up the ante. And there's nothing scarier than suddenly having a bunch of teeth in your face. Right, that is so primal.
It's true.
So primal. It gets at the brainstem level, and it makes sense because that must be the one thing that every creature in the evolution of this planet fears is a bunch of teeth right in front of your face. So, I think to add that to the angels, it really just sort of contrasts with the idea of that they are these sort of peaceful, serene statues
who kill you nicely.
Yes, and that just I do want to, since we've done the cold open, I don't want to get too far away from TLDW without also mentioning the thing at the end, which seems like it's a teaser for a whole series of Statue Destruction Squad.
Yeah.
What did you think? So that was a Russell T Davies edition, right? This is. There were several possible endings that they didn't do. We'll get to that, but this was basically Davies' idea. First of all, to name the episode Blink, because it wasn't.
Well, that's inspired.
Yes, he was the one who was like, no, Blink needs to be all over the script of this episode, like it's a trailer. And Moffat certainly took that note to heart. Oh my God, So talk about the Doctor Who Beatles. I mean, they really fed off each other for this one. But that thing at the end is very RTD as well. It's sort of like leaving it open, and it's like I remember the feeling this the very first time I saw it in 2008. I was like, that was a brilliant episode. This is just going to make kids go out into the streets with sledgehammers and start smashing all the statues that they can see because they're so terrified. Like, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah, I hear you. It still came across to me like a little condescending and dumb, and it's not bad, but it is like, okay, Russell. Or I thought it was Moffat, so I said, okay, Stephen. Which is it sort of makes the point that you don't really need, right? It's almost like, would you end Psycho with shots of showers all over the place, right? Like, you just wouldn't do it. I mean, I get it. I'm supposed to be scared
kitchen
of the shower
noise.
now. Yeah. I mean, you could, the scare will happen regardless. So I was over the top. I think it's
over the top, and also I think it's a rare misstep by RTD because he doesn't it means that he doesn't really understand what is scary about the episode. Which, to your point earlier, the scary thing is not the weeping angels. They are phenomenally scary. But you don't then sort of expand it by saying, oh, no, they're just all statues. Because that's just like too big of an expansion. Or maybe any statue is a weeping angel. No, what's scary is the not being able to blink. So that's the thing. And that is what we get when, that's, by the way, what the screenshot behind me is right from. Is right. The stuff at the end of the episode where the Doctor is just in your face on the screen, and then the last shot is him blinking. That part is nice. So him saying "don't blink" is great. Intercutting it with the images of all statues, so that all kids are forever scared of all statues that they see anywhere ever. Not so great.
Do you want to talk about the alternate endings? At least one of them that I know about, because it's a good. Because when you were talking about the intercut, I thought it would be an interesting coda to the dark ending that I believe was the original ending. So, according to I think Stephen Moffat shared this at some point, that his original ending had Sally giving the Doctor her folder, going back to the shop, and there was an angel there. Yes. And essentially Larry would come to find her and she'd be gone, and so then he'd look at a painting.
Yes.
And he would see her there, and ostensibly the painting was done in the past, right? So she was taken by the angel. So that's a dark ending. And but I kind of like it. I wouldn't say I would prefer it. I like that they win definitively here. I like that. You got to do that a lot of the time. But as sort of a fan of horror movies, and when you have the dark turn at the end that sort of gut punches you, I don't know, that can work. I got to say, those kind of horror movies tend to stay with me. So it depends on kind of what you're trying to achieve ultimately with the feeling you want your audience to walk away with. But
I think
don't know.
the problem with that ending is it really puts a lot of burden on that painting. That Larry looks at the end and realizes that Sally's been in it all along. First of all, you have to believe that he wouldn't have ever seen that painting before, or
Right.
ever noticed that it looked like Sally, or ever mentioned it. And yes, it's an antiquities store, so you have antiquities and DVDs,
Well,
I believe.
putting that aside, right? Like, I
Mhm.
think you could sort of write around that a little bit by having it not necessarily be in the store, but maybe something that he sees a little later. And you know
Or
what I
maybe
mean? Like,
it's a package that he unwraps. Like it's been a thing throughout the episode that he's behind on is unwrapping his inventory, right?
oh
And he
yeah,
unwraps the latest thing.
got a bunch
And
of piled up mail. Yeah.
that would be nice because that would echo the Kathy Nightingale letter and the way that that's revealed. So I kind of like that idea. We should also mention the other alternate ending would have revealed that Sally was actually not interested in Larry. That she was actually interested in women, and there was some line about Larry saying, it's what's wrong. We live together. I held. When they hold hands, he mentioned something like, well, "That's nothing. I held hands with my aunt," and she says something like, "Oh, well, maybe your aunt's cuter than you are." But something that gives us the idea that Sally was actually not interested in Larry all along because she's not interested in men, which would be interesting. Bit of extra representation, but also it just kind of. I'm glad that they get their happy ending.
Yeah, agreed. And I think they clearly have bonded through their experience. And well, I guess I would ask you again, like, what do you make of that? They haven't essentially, consummated is probably the wrong word, but they haven't made each other official until the end. It feels like, right? Like she's dealing with this, but once she encounters the doctor and she has that closure, she sort of feels like she can feel again, I guess, which I think works. I mean,
it does.
Yeah.
Totally, it works like crazy. That's why I'm glad that we stuck with the ending where they actually do get to be together in the end, because you do. The great thing about Blink is it has so many mini stories within it. I've said that at the start of the show, but like this is one of them. You insert. Just the cleverness of the script means that you insert in that 1 year that separates the two things. By the way, they took the title card out now and officially in the show, but it is supposed to be 1 year later.
Oh yeah,
scene,
depends which version you watch.
Yeah. Anyway, one. Let's just say it's canon that it's a year later. It means that for a year she's been unable to move on because she's waiting for the doctor, and I like that because it's such a thing that we see time and time and time again in Doctor Who, that his companions, as it were, and we should call Sally Sparrow a companion, sort of, because she almost takes a trip in the TARDIS. Yeah. She suddenly goes into the TARDIS, as does Larry. Which we often forget. I did forget that watching Blink, that there's a moment with them in the TARDIS. But yeah, you often see companions not able to move on. I mean, that's such a common thing to talk about in the context of Doctor Who, that it was, a thing for Power of the Doctor, right? The companion support group. You can't go back to ordinary life. So we've seen time again, people being blocked by...
Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah as well. She never married, basically said no one else could compare.
So
there was all that.
Reaches into the mythology of the larger show, and it says, this we're going to give you a clean ending here. Sally Sparrow is not going to spend the rest of their days being hung up on the Doctor, waiting for the Doctor like some prequel version of Amy Pond. It's 1 year and done. She gets a doctor meeting moment, and in that moment, she realizes that she's with the man that she's supposed to be with, not the doctor.
And exactly, and I think it's almost like the second ending. Like the climax is very clever and just feels so right from a plot standpoint, but the emotional resonance comes later, and it sort of it really works. I mean, I really like that they even play the 10th Doctor's theme, even though there's not really a lot happening, right? It's just kind of walking around. Nice to meet you, Sally Sparrow. But you're really feeling what this is meaning for her. Like suddenly it all fits. My life makes sense. This is it. You know? Okay. Well, this is all I needed. You go save the world, and I'm here with with Larry.
What
and
is
we're gonna be great.
amazing is that is the third of what feels like fully fleshed out love affairs in this 45-minute science fiction horror.
That's true.
The third! Holy cow! Kathy, goes back to 1920.
Yeah.
Just the economy of those lines. Are you going to stop following me? No, I don't think I will.
Right?
Smash cut into marriage.
Yeah.
Wow, you believe it. And then I got to say...
Yeah, the actress is great.
I got to say, and Pete, I got to ask you about this. Did you also cry again at Billy Shipton?
Yeah,
The older Billy Shipton.
I
My
feel like
God.
I don't know. Again, like the sheer economy of this episode of like fleshing out characters so quickly, and really getting you to feel for them is incredible. And old Billy. They made so many right calls because, as I think is widely known, or maybe it's not, but it's like they were originally going to have the younger actor
In old age makeup.
Yeah, they were going to have him in old age makeup, but then they thought, well,
Michael
you know what?
Obiora. Yeah,
It's the right in that you would just sort of be seeing the makeup to some extent. Like, yes, as an audience member, you'd be going along with it. You wouldn't necessarily say that ruins the show, but you would notice. It would take you a little bit out of the show. So they decided, let's recast and make sure she's actually talking to an elderly person. And so the right call. Like, it was just, you're right there in the moment. Her line, it's the same rain, like just hits for some reason, because it's not, and it's so weird that it hits because it's sort of almost like a plot line, but it is like it's just like you're reminded in just that one line what has sort of been robbed from Billy, right?
Yes.
They could have been this amazing couple and have a great love affair or whatever, right? Like, and you're so sad for them, but you're sort of happy they're reunited. Like, the emotions, again, we've barely gotten to know. There's not even the main characters here, right?
And he shows her his wedding photo of a woman who is also named Sally, and you get the sense that they just spend hours there, just going through his life and sharing his life. And the line that sends chills down my spine, even thinking of it now, and the one that really triggered my tears was, "Oh, Sally Sparrow, life is long and you are hot." And just the weariness in that line, it's just, it speaks volumes. And big shout out to Lewis Mahoney, who played old Billy. He was, we've mentioned him before in, I believe, Planet of Evil he was in. And that's when I discovered that he did actually die in 2020. Sadly, R.I.P. We don't know whether it was raining at the time, or whether he wished the end of rain. But yes, it's impossible to tell that those lines have been looped so that young Billy Michael is playing him with a Ghanaian accent to match Lewis Mahoney.
Because on set he was doing it basically in a London accent or his own accent.
Which is such an inspired choice, by the way, because I think in a London accent, his sort of very fast hitting on Sally Sparrow might come across as a bit more creepy.
Agreed. Yeah, I think.
But in the exotic Ghanaian accent, it's just like, like this guy is. You can believe that she would fall for him, that she'd go for, not only does he look cute, but he has an exotic accent. Like, it just ups the ante, right? One of a number of just sort of, happy accidents that Blink has produced.
What did you think? Did it bother you at all that there's no explanation for why he dies until at the end of the rain? Like, basically right then and there.
Well, here's what I would say there is an explanation. And there's an explanation for literally every timey-wimey plot hole you can find in this episode, which is that Sally Sparrow wrote it all down.
Right. Classic bootstrap paradox.
Yes, it's classic bootstrap paradox. There is no original project. So because Sally writes that Billy dies when the rain ends, presumably, in telling the whole story to the Doctor. Then the Doctor tells Billy that. So Billy, no. So not only is Billy sort of his body is like expecting this his entire life. He knows when he's going to die, and his body's you know this thing. When we get that old, it just you just sort of and he's ready. You get that sense at the end that he's like super peaceful and ready to go, and like he knew he would have this to look forward to, and it's beautiful. So you can believe that not only is it bootstrap paradox that it happens because she said he'd do it, so he knows that he's going to do it, so he does it, so that she can say that she does it. It's part that, and it's part of the way that we adapt to what we know as our fate. Even if it wasn't necessarily our fate. Like this episode has really deep things to say about, is everything preordained? The whole willpower. Do we even have free will? Debate like this is, you wouldn't necessarily, like we've touched on so many things. It's romance, it's quantum physics, but it's also this intense ontological debate about free will.
Which comes to a crescendo in the scene at the house where she's talking to the Doctor with those DVD extras. And, it's such a genius, again, Moffat. I mean, it's hard to not sound like we're just heaping praise on the guy, but honestly, this is such a classic piece of television, like, oh, so good. But that bit where they're basically talking to each other across time, and it's such a classic moment. Like, I mean, it's one of the most memorable scenes in all of Doctor Who. For one, how it's just executed and sort of perfectly sums up the story, but also that line where he says, "Okay, time isn't linear; it's a blob of." I should have the quote in front of me, but it's the first time he fully says, "It's timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff."
Yes,
which
big ball.
is so Tennant and so doctory, as well as kind of a real thing. I know it's, this is very artful, but it is, if you read, say, the works of, say, Brian Greene, who is a very, good pop, not really pop, but like mainstream science writer,
right?
You kind of get your mind blown on how every point in space-time is, in a sense, connected to every other point in space-time, for reasons of universe expansion, the speed of light, etc. I won't go into all of it here, but if you've read his stuff, you know what I'm talking about. It really expands your mind on sort of reality, and that's really like kind of what the Doctors get. And so again, the economy, in so few lines, he sums up that whole idea, which is a real scientific concept of like what time and space is.
Yeah,
so it's like
he has that whole line about people assume time is a linear progression, cause and effect. But no, it's actually more of a wibbly-wobbly ball of stuff, which, again, great sort of explanation of like string theory. Dimensions are definitely a wibbly-wobbly ball of stuff. It's good an explanation as any that we're actually going to understand. But yeah, I do want to say a few things before we leave Detective Inspector Billy Shipton, who's now off duty, so he's just Billy. First of all, I really want to see a spin-off series, and I'm saddened that Big Finish hasn't already gotten off this, because Billy Shipton, let's give him credit. You could arguably say he's the Doctor's longest working companion.
Yeah.
He helps the Doctor unfold a scheme that lasts for 39 years. So come at me, Jamie. Come at me, Sarah Jane, if you think that you did the Doctor more service than 39 years and 17 DVD Easter eggs.
Depends if you include the novels and comics, I guess. But yes. No, it's true. I mean, if he was never really a companion, I think you need to really think that through, right? Because it's like, I think he earns it. Yeah. At least an honorable mention.
He really does.
More than Adam. Jeez.
He totally, even though he doesn't get a trip in the TARDIS himself, he gets to hang out with the Doctor in 1969, and for who knows how long after. Like, I'd love to see the timeline on when those moments with the Doctor worked. When did he go into the studio to record this? Like, is that in 1969 itself? And then I want to see the spin-off of Billy Shipton in 1960. Like, you could have a whole series per year that he lives. maybe not that much, not that in depth, but it's still, like what would he have had to struggle against? How did he insert these Easter eggs? What if the directors or the studios came after him?
Well, it's funny. The Moffat expands very slightly on what his life was like in the commentary.
Yeah.
And he mentions that the doctor, essentially gives him some stock tips so that he can go and be a successful person and comfortable. But I think within this grain that Moffat has thrown at us, it fixes another plot hole. And indulge me for a second, but if you think about all the people who disappeared at Western Drumlins, why have none of them made trouble in the timeline? Why has no one said like, why? What am I doing here? Why don't we know about them at all? And here's my thinking: that when they go back, they probably have a difficult time early, but then they realize there's nothing they can do. But then they realize, you know what? I can use my future knowledge, and in other words, I don't need stock tips. The Billy probably doesn't need stock tips. It's like, wait a minute, I'm in 1969. You know what? There's these companies, I believe, called Intel and Apple and others that all you have to do is get in early, and you are leading a very comfortable life for the rest of your life, no matter what timeline you're in. So this is kind of my headcanon on like how angel victims are sort of killed nicely, but also like how they're not constantly disrupting the timeline.
That is a good one, I guess, because now, as you were saying that, I started to get mad with Kathy Nightingale for going back to 1920 and not killing Hitler.
Oh, wow.
Maybe
the angels avoid those activist types, I guess.
Would it have been so hard once you've married this guy from Hull to just say, you know what, for our honeymoon, let's go to Munich. There's this, I want to sort of check out the political scene there. Oh, who's this guy ranting in a beer cellar, this former corporal? He looks dangerous.
Let me see that Luger.
Yeah, yes. Or maybe just drink him to death, roofie him and then just kill him off that way. Because that's 3 years prior, 1923 year prior to the Munich beer hall putsch. It would be so easy to take Hitler out.
There's some tips for you, future angel victims.
Yeah, if you happen to be, and we sort of get, it is kind of canon from Blink, right? That the same angel will send you back to the same time.
Right. Yeah.
Era. So there must be other people who were sent back to 1920. So if that's one of the angel settings that they're on, do go straight to Munich, please.
I like that explanation too. What the angels are sort of attuned to a certain year, and it probably has to do with their own age. There's probably you don't make up whatever you want, but it obviously fixes the thing in the plot, makes them seem also less omnipotent, right? That like if they could sort of attenuate that and send you whenever, that would be a little too powerful. I like it. It sounds a little more like this thing that is clearly like a show made up concept. Makes it a little more believable that this is like an actual race.
You totally believe that. It's the genius of Blink, is that any time you think that you might have a moment for your brain to say, stop, hang on, let me think nope, the show has moved on, and you've swallowed another 3 concepts somehow, almost against your will, which is, I think Moffat got too confident because of Blink, that people would swallow concepts very fast.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily understand what he did here. And one thing he does do, by the way, is repeat anything that is important is repeated twice. There's a very good sort of script tip, right?
True.
If you want your audience to be paying attention to something, you somehow work out a way to say it twice in the script, and just assume they didn't pay attention the first time. And that happens over and over again here, over and over.
You're thinking of obviously the blinking. Which is
that is one
a lot. But anything else specifically?
Oh God, the fact that we get some of the DVD conversation twice, explaining the nature of time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's definitely a big one. The fact that they are 17 DVDs kind of is repeated over and over, and you see Moffat doing that a lot. He did that in I don't know if you've seen Inside Man.
No.
The Moffat thing on Netflix, but the opening episode they have Stanley Tucci solving a mystery where it's like a certain amount of money is deposited in the senator's wife's bank account every time they have sex. It's one of those clever Moffat-y things, but he does this where he's like repeats the riddle over and over. Why 17 DVDs? Why 17 DVDs? Right? So you see him doing that, and almost anything in this episode that's important, even telling Sally Sparrow to duck in the cold open happens twice.
Yeah, absolutely. So much good writing. I mean, Moffat, one of the things he does here, obviously, we talked about, the ontological implications, the bootstrap paradox. This is really his A game when it comes to sort of playing with time. He does a lot of that. Stephen Moffat, I got to say, whatever you think of as a showrunner, he's probably the showrunner that has explored the time travel aspect of Doctor Who the most, and probably the best. And it's a really impressive record that he has, like with this, with Pandora Opens, The Big Bang. Even just the whole conceit of River Song, encountering the Doctor backwards. And I really would love to. I hope the rumor that we talked about in an earlier podcast that he's coming back with RTD again, sort of the band's back together, was good, and I hope he does this some more, because I feel like we haven't quite had that. We kind of went. I wouldn't say there's a lot that we could say about the Chibnall era, but it sort of didn't have quite that same sort of mind warpy cleverness in playing with time travel. And
Chibnall kind of wants to be that. That is was suggested to me by the whole timeless child thing. Like he wants to be Moffat in some ways, but you can't you can't out Moffat, and he is. Moffat is like I sort of think of what Amy Pond says to the Doctor when in The Doctor's Wife, where the TARDIS comes alive. Amy Pond looks at him and says, "Did you wish really hard?" I sort of feel like I am such a fan of timey-wiminess in Doctor Who, and I was as a classic series fan in my youth. That like Stephen Moffat is the showrunner that my 7-year-old self would have wanted. Like I just got such shivers down the spine anytime Doctor Who got timey-wimey, which it did so little, so frustratingly little in the classic series. I know. I talked many times about how much I love the TARDIS being in the middle of the story, and that was partly because I wanted more. I was restless for more back and forth. Which is certainly what Moffat gives you in spades. Probably too much. It's a little bit sort of be careful what you wish for kind of situation with Moffat and his timey-wiminess. But I will just add to your list I always go back to his wonderful timey-wiminess in The Wedding of River Song, the beginning of that.
Oh yeah,
where the whole universe is stuck.
The first Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes, yes. That is a brilliant analogy,
by the way. So,
oh my God, you must if you love timey-wimey.
I know.
That's the way to go.
Gotta do it.
Dimensiony, why mention?
So we've filed a lot of praise on him, but I do think we should at least touch on sort of where they went with the Angels after this. And he sort of has made the analogy when he, taking this great concept, which was inevitable. It was inevitable they were going to bring the Angels back. Let's be real. You simply such a winning concept. Yes, there would have been a poetic, some poetry to just leaving them here, and that's it. But they went ahead and did Flesh and Stone, Time of Angels. That was Moffat as well. And he made the analogy between sort of alien and aliens, even though it's kind of plural in both. And unfortunately, I would say for the Angels themselves, and again, we'll get into reviewing the episode when we get to it, but it's definitely probably one of the worst because it takes away the thing that really makes them scary is you never actually see them move. And then when they made that choice later, it just seemed like such a mistake to me. I think the most, and they wisely never did that again. Yeah, we see it as sort of a failed experiment. But I'll give Chibnall points for including the Village of the Angels.
Yes,
with Whitaker. which I do think worked. It was actually one of her better episodes, I would argue.
It was one of the highest raters of the Flux season, and for good reason. And it does up the ante, which you seem to always need to do with the angels, by having them turn the Doctor into an angel, turn the Doctor into stone.
It also really zeroes in, I think, on that phrase that you talked about earlier, the lonely assassins, and almost kind of takes it literally.
Yeah,
and that was, I thought, really smart, and it was a much better exploration, I would say, of like what Angel Society is like. Like, it wasn't really like huge, but it's like there was a lot there that you could infer from what they were like, and much better than either Flesh and Stone, and I would say Angels Take Manhattan, which I don't even want to talk about because it's just so freaking silly.
Misfire, yeah, big
massive
time.
Misfire.
Big time. Statue of Liberty-sized misfire. Yeah, the problem is, I mean, there is a problem with always wanting to make the angels bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and better and bolder, and, more and more added to their canon. Maybe what we've learned certainly we've learned it when we went to Genesis of the Daleks and Dalek, is that sometimes you got to bring it back to just people who haven't encountered these monsters that we know are terrifying monsters. That can be the scariest thing of all, right? Just to bring it back to just a few people who don't understand what they're dealing with here. And that's what we kind of need to, if the Weeping Angels ever come back, and I hope they do, I hope we bring it back with a Dalek-style episode that maybe just call it Angel. Maybe just show the damage that a single Weeping Angel can do. Yeah.
Wow, that's a really smart idea. Oh man,
right?
RTD again. You got it. For
I'm actually going to put the phone over David Tennant's mouth there. Do call us. That the Billy Shipton spin-off series. We're just generating ideas at a rapid clip.
Yeah. And so before we get to the 4 questions, one more thing that I don't think we said explicitly, it's all implied, but one of the best things about this episode is that it is a Dr. Light episode, and that you really don't know what they're going to do to Sally and Larry. Like, you really can't underestimate the value of that, because if it was the Doctor and Martha, I mean, obviously they're going to figure out some way out of it, and you still have a show, right? I mean, they'd still do interesting things, and there can be consequences. But here, you really believe the characters can pay the ultimate consequence. And again, in the earliest drafts of this, they did. At least one of them did. So it's the fact that the Doctor isn't there really levels up the fear to another level. It's just brilliant, like, just so good. Like, the structure of this is just perfect for a horror episode.
He's in it just enough to make it not feel like a Dr. Light episode, right? Because the focus is on the Doctor and not on a Love and Monsters kind of who is this guy kind of way. That's another valid approach. We'll get to Love and Monsters someday. But I actually really liked it. But this is sort of like, the Doctor is a mysterious image on a screen, which again is so meta. I mean, I had that. I may have mentioned it on the show before. One of the first stories I ever wrote as a kid was about Doctor Who, quote unquote, as he was then, to me. In his scarf, it was Tom Baker, pulling me into the screen.
Right.
Like, that was the story that I wrote. So the idea of the Doctor being an image on the screen who you can actually talk to or have some kind of dialogue with, like, that is very meta commentary on fandom itself, Doctor Who fandom itself. We've all had something like that fantasy. The fact that it was enmeshed in the story of Sally Sparrow, who is a child in the story that inspired this, really brings it back to that sense of, like, kids. As a kid, you can almost believe that the Doctor is real, that you can talk to him through the screen. So the fact that Blink did it, that it went there, and of course now no Dr. Light episode can ever do that again without seeming like a ripoff. But it really went there.
Well, whenever we want to talk to the Doctor through the screen, we usually want to ask him some questions.
First of all, there's a 5th question. Before we get to the 4 questions, do say, Pete, how did your kids I assume they've seen Blink before, but what do they think this time around?
They have. So actually, thanks for asking, because I like I mentioned in the last podcast, I've recently watched it with my daughter during the Halloween season. She was just old enough to sort of get through it without being too freaky, as long as one of us was watching it with her. So that was good. So what I did this time was I watched this over this Thanksgiving holiday, and I watched it with my immediate family, like my wife, my two kids, but also my in-laws. So my wife's parents. So we all watched because one of the good things about this episode is such a good episode to show people new to the show, and they're not fans of the show. They know I am, obviously, but they don't watch it. And I thought, well, let's see how they react. And I'll say this: it didn't turn them into fans.
No,
but I liked watching my kids being excited to watch it with them. Like it's kind of like they were looking at their reactions, and then we were talking about it after. So it was a good collective moment. And I think if you have been won over by Doctor Who in any way, like, or like this episode alone, whether you're a casual fan or a hardcore fan, sort of can bring people together. It becomes a good time. So yeah, it was a fun experience. Again, I don't think they're going to subscribe to BritBox or go even HBO Max or buy some DVDs, but they were like, oh yeah, that was really fun and interesting. And
it's a good sort of way of showing people that Doctor Who isn't what they think it is, right? If they think it's just it's a thing for kids, it's not got any depth to it. You show them Blink, they're like, okay, I didn't realize it could do that. Interesting. You don't necessarily want to. You want to have I would always start people with Blink and then go to 11th Hour.
Okay.
Just because then that shows the Doctor can change face, whatever. And then it's another strong episode. You need it needs to be the start of the propaganda.
Yeah, they were both on my list that I've mentioned before of the 12 episodes to watch before the 50th anniversary special, both Blink and the 11th Hour. Wait, actually, was it 11th Hour? I might not have. Anyway, forget what I said.
Well, Rose, certainly, I know you're a big fan of showing people Rose, and it's starting at the beginning of the new show. Not necessarily. When I have the heavy burden of trying to introduce someone to Doctor Who, I start with Blink. I always do. And it seems to have done the job. But I will always remember one time screening it for friends in 2008, and one particular friend who literally would jump out of her seat when at the teeth, at the angel face, the jump cuts.
Yeah.
It's a good one for that. Did you have anyone jumping out the seat at Thanksgiving?
It's maybe inside. Also, it was on a night we were a little bit tired, so it might have been, just before bed. But
it's a fine old one to just relax you before bedtime. It's beautiful. Yes.
Exactly. No question. But we have questions. There are 4 of them, and they are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. The first question is, of course, why did the randomizer take us here? Which we touched on a little bit, but let's see if we can get a definitive answer. Chris, what's your theory?
Well, I did mention the wood Blink, talking about the cat in Planet of Giants. I mentioned that. I think it's also like the randomizer is newly interested in Tennant because he's coming back.
True.
You might say that this is the first Tennant Dr. Light episode, and the Power of the Doctor was the second.
Right.
It's kind of Tennant Light, but still he plays a very important role in it.
Okay.
Also, I think the randomizer does want to mess with us by using up all the good ones. And I want to mention the scariest possible answer to this question, which is that the angels have the randomizer.
Oh, terrifying. Yes. Wow. Maybe
they're sucking all the time potential out of it.
Maybe we're destined for an angel streak.
Could be.
This. So I thought of a aspect of the story that we really didn't talk about, which is that the TARDIS dematerializes without Sally and Larry in it, which is unusual for the TARDIS. Again, probably clearly because the Doctor read that's what he had to do. But we just came from Planet of Giants, where
Yeah.
the TARDIS wasn't just reduced in size, but once it dematerializes at the end, everything gets big except the stuff that was
Yeah.
already small before they got in, so like the disease or the insecticide infection in Barbara,
Right.
as well as the seed. So I'm bridging that that the TARDIS is this more sophisticated device, is what the randomizer is trying to signal to us, and what things that you might think are plot holes are really just the TARDIS being smarter than you think. So that's what I'm.
Yeah, is this the first time that the TARDIS dematerializes without the people who are ostensibly inside it?
I believe yes. For that, going that like a dematerialization, because we've seen it materialize around people before. In Parting of the Ways is the one that really sticks out to me, but it's done it a few times. But I think this might be the first time it dematerializes without people. Yeah,
which is interesting, and that's kind of a scary moment in itself. Like the Doctor's abandoning them, but it's wonderful. But yeah, the fact that we also get it's bigger on the inside moment in the middle of all of everything else that's going on in Blink, so fantastic. But yeah, the randomizer definitely loves the TARDIS episodes and is burning through them at a prodigious rate.
And so do I. But we need to cut to the second question, which is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Okay, so the evil plot is the Angels plot. Aren't we told that it would destroy 2/3 of the universe, or is that just if Billy Shipton goes on a date with Sally Sparrow?
I think that was the Billy line, but basically the Angels don't just have the phone box; they get the phone box if their plot succeeds. And they came pretty close because they had that key. So
they suck all the potential time energy out of the TARDIS, which.
Well, I just felt like, why wouldn't you just use the TARDIS to travel through time and, effectively turn Earth into an angel farm?
Well, here's why. Because the TARDIS requires, 6 people to stand around the console to be operated normally? Now, how are the Angels going to do that without looking at each other?
Got it. So, I guess they would just suck all the time energy, and it's still the same difference, I guess. It's just they can't time travel explicitly now. Though I guess I don't know. If you think about it, why couldn't they just send themselves back in time and then keep? I guess it depends on how long lived they are.
You do sort of bring up the thorny question of angel reproduction. How do weeping angels get it on? Didn't know I'd be asking myself that question today. But yeah, are they like battery farmed, or is there weeping angel sex where they just don't look at each other?
I will say in Blink, we don't get enough of what the Angels are exactly, and do they even have a culture / society? Again, and to a certain extent, you kind of wish they just left it at Blink and left that to our imaginations, because I think the explanations that sort of came later, not that there were explanations really, but like the depictions we saw said later didn't really add up to what we were thinking. But I always sort of thought the Angels themselves aren't even like humanoid in a sense, or if they are, they kind of aren't, because they're this sort of decoherent mess of probability and not really a statue. And that I like that idea scientifically. I don't know how that sort of manifests outside of the angel idea, but it makes me think even trying to think of angel society is probably the wrong idea, right? Like that they're more like things along the lines of those time-eating monsters we see in Father's Day and things like that. They're just these things that emerge or have emerged from space-time because of how weird it is, and not really a thing that evolved in the way a biological creature would. That's kind of what I think when I think of the angels.
Yeah, I mean, they've clearly evolved to turn into stone, so that, a very important part of their evolutionary process, we're told. But I'm now realizing that one of the best things about the Weeping Angels is, yes, they are another one of these Doctor Who cliches that they've been around since the dawn of time.
Right.
But because they never speak, they never have to utter the line, "We've been around since the beginning of time, Doctor."
Well, and again, giving them a voice in flesh and stone and Time of the Angels, probably not the best idea.
Yeah, exactly. They should just pass notes. They should. You look away from an angel and it's handing you a post-it note.
So do we answer? Is it like, I guess they consume all the power in the TARDIS and then they're all over the Earth and they're
I guess that all over all of time and space all at once. Maybe they win the time war. I mean that is it is possible. It is possible, and maybe we should consider this question: could the angels be potentially more devastating to the universe than the Daleks?
Maybe. I mean, they consume time energy. They send things back in time, so they're not bothersome anymore.
They would certainly dispatch all the Daleks into a pre-Dalek era. They'd all become Khaleds again.
The thing is, you definitely couldn't fight them like en masse without time travel technology. Like you would need to be the Time Lords, the Daleks, or something else to properly have a war with the angels, because otherwise they would just quickly send all your forces back in time and, kick their feet up. So it kind of makes it a more interesting time war, I will say that, than just a couple of ultra powerful races shooting at each other, which is ultimately what we got in Day of the Doctor.
Right.
Not complaining about Day of the Doctor, by the way. I'm just saying, I said at the time, it is one of those things where when we saw it on screen, the time war, it was probably not, didn't add up entirely to what we wanted and we're expecting in terms of an actual time war where time was a thing that was used as a weapon.
Now I'm just imagining a sort of last day of the Time War on Gallifrey where the enemy is the Weeping Angels. And you've got in Arcadia, like in the Sky Shields, you've got Time Lords who have like their eyes propped open on stalks. Like everyone's got the clockwork orange thing pulling their eyelids open all the time. Well, and everyone's just looking in all directions at once.
And what you would get instead of the telescope where you see the tiny Daleks coming out of the clouds, someone's turning the telescope and then suddenly it's just the Fang face.
Yes, really the angel close, comes through the telescope.
Like right there.
Yeah, you'd have to shut down all scanners around Gallifrey. Okay, this is my new headcanon, by the way, for how the Master managed to destroy Gallifrey again
in the Terminal
era. Yeah, he just used angels. Yep.
Yeah. Boom. Done. Okay, I love it. Satisfactory answer, even if it wasn't the question. All right. Third question. Where is the Clara Splinter?
Well, she's clearly all over West of Drumlin, kind of just looking at angels to slow them down, just to keep Larry and Sally safe for long enough.
Toothpicks in the eyes, for sure.
Yes.
She's a neighbor. That's kind of one of the things I thought of. She's sort of the neighbor, like across the street or next door, who must have, I don't know, like either she's keeping a really low profile with the angels or just has an army of people helping her out to watch
she's
them.
She's a curtain twitcher. I mean, you're making me realize this is the ultimate sort of British story, because British people do love to snoop on their neighbors because we have so many of them. They're so close. The houses are much smaller. A lot of curtain twitching happens in a lot of British suburbs. So it's like it's the perfect story. That the idea of you could be a good guy in this episode by just simply standing at your window with a cup of tea the whole time, looking into someone else's house in case there are angels there.
That's awesome.
As Clara is doing.
The only other thing I thought of was maybe she's paying the power bill for that house.
Maybe she's the delivery service that brings the TARDIS from one location to another.
She's angel deliveries.
Angel deliveries, yeah. She leaves a trail of breadcrumbs of whatever angels eat, I guess.
Angel Dash, Task Angel. Possibilities are endless.
Love it. Yeah. If any entrepreneurs want to start those, do call us.
Oh, awesome. All right. And now the final question, the only question, the question that everyone's been waiting for. What are we rating this episode? Our rating system, of course, has 4 ratings. There is a Dalek, which is a very good episode, an Ogron, which is perhaps a not so great episode, a Professor Hater, where it's probably not a great episode, but at least we learned something, and a Viscount Banger, the rating we reserve for the best of the best. And
named for Lala Ward's father, who was Viscount Banger. I think this is an Ogron with his eyes propped open. No, of course it's not. Of course it's not. It's beyond Viscount Banger. It's Viscount Blinker.
Exactly. It is the Viscount Banger that is staring at all the other Viscount Bangers and keeping them frozen in place. Because it's in a sense kind of a cut above a lot of them. I mean, it's amazing. Blink is one of the all-time best episodes, not just of Doctor Who, but of television. I mean, see it. I think everyone listening to this has seen it. Go see it again. Honestly, I was scared.
It holds up.
Having seen it so recently. Obviously, anything can be seen too many times, but I was scared I wouldn't be as into it. I was into it again. Every time I see it, it holds up. It's great. You can obviously you want to pace it out, but it has not been diminished at all by passage of time.
Yeah, don't watch it every day, but it definitely holds up, even though it's full of flip phones and DVDs. And every single line in it holds up. It is
funny. My son Jack liked that line, "You only have 17 DVDs." And he made the observation today, someone would say, "You have 17 DVDs still?"
Yes. Yes. I really want to know what those 17 DVDs were, by the way. That would be so. I wish we'd get a freeze frame on the list.
Well, apparently they did create titles and title cards, essentially posters for them that were all fake.
Right.
So they're not real movies, but
who has been selling Sally Sparrow DVDs? Like she's getting these knockoff movies.
I like to imagine Sally Sparrow was kind of a movie reviewer for an alternative weekly, and she's not really a movie person. And she just basically got virtually all of these gifted to her. Oh, by the way, a line we did not talk about, which again, these little sort of in addition to everything else, it's got bits of Moffat dialogue where Kathy asks, I like old things. Basically, Sally says, "I like old things. They make me feel sad."
Yes.
And she asks, "Why do you want to feel sad?" And she says, it means I feel happy for
It's happy
people.
for deep people.
Yeah.
I love that line so much. It was the first line from Blink to stick in my head for all eternity. By the way, lines that I wonder how they come across to American viewers, where they say, Kathy Nightingale says, "Hey, Sparrow Nightingale," and Sally says, "It's a bit ITV." Did that come across at all? Did you understand that?
Yeah, I did, even though I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I didn't grow up knowing what ITV is. I do know intellectually what ITV is. I don't feel what ITV is, but I can also transfer that to sort of my lived experience where, it's a little, I don't know what you would say the equivalent is. It's a little A&E. It's a little...
Yeah, it's a bit Fox.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
That would be it. But yeah, a wonderful little dig by a BBC show at their commercial rivals.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think CW might have been the thing.
Yeah. bit CW.
CW.
Bit Dawson's Creek.
Nice. All right, guys. Believe it or not, we've blinked and we've come to the end of our commentary on Blink.
Well, I was going to say we were both recording this when it was raining in our respective towns. And the rain has stopped here, so it is time for me to die.
And the rain looks like it stopped here too. Oh my
God.
It's
R.I.P. Billy Shipton.
The angels have the phone box. Okay, guys, we got to get into it, the phone box that is, and activate our randomizer to find out where we are going next. The randomizer, of course, consists of two components: the pull to open Codex, which is a complete, comprehensive list of every single televised story of Doctor Who, all 302 of them. And the other part of the randomizer is, of course, the execute.
Random.org. By the way, if 302 doesn't match the number you have on your own personal Doctor Who spreadsheet, because let's be real, we all know you have one, It's because we do things like the next story, I was reminded when watching this, is Utopia. And we in the Codex, Utopia and Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords are one coherent story, because that just makes sense, right? If you've seen Utopia, you can't just end it on that cliffhanger and say that's a single story. So that's why our number may differ from yours, but that is the number we've settled on. Eagle-eyed viewers have pointed out that we missed Destiny of the Daleks. So we
that was a while back.
That was a while back. We don't talk about that. That's a fixed point in time. It literally, we have fixed that point in time. Anyway,
that timeline never happened.
We use random.org as the executor to match the codex in our randomizer components, which is a fancy way of saying that we go to random.org, which uses atmospheric noise, not algorithmic nonsense to create random numbers, because algorithms are very bad at actually coming up with an actually random number. But atoms bouncing around the atmosphere, that's true randomness. Plus, those atoms know they're being observed, so they may change the particle. Yes. And that's why the randomizer takes us to weird places, is because we're observing this particular atmospheric noise. Take that in your pipe and smoke it, Albert Einstein.
Well, I'm feeling good about the executor, because now that it stopped raining in both of our time zones, that the atmospheric noise has probably been reduced. Maybe it's going to be, it's good. The sun's going to come out, and my challenge on the randomizer here, I think it's going to listen to me in all this timey-wimey talk. I want the timiest, wimiest episode you can possibly come up with.
That isn't Blink.
Yeah, that isn't Blink, right? Exactly. And we listed some contenders as we were chatting about it. So it's probably a Moffat episode, not necessarily. And even if it's not the timey-wimey, something where time travel is used as part of the story. So go for it, the randomizer. Surprise me.
Nice one. My challenge to the randomizer, we always issue challenges, is I am going to use that whole thing of where you stop it raining by taking an umbrella outside. Take us to an Angel episode, randomizer.
Ooh.
I'm basically telling the randomizer to blink twice if it's been kidnapped.
I love it. All right.
All right. Are we ready?
We're ready. Let's do this in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Moisturize me.
176. We're still in New Who.
176. 170. Time locked. Idiot's Lantern.
Oh, wow. It wanted to take us to another Tenant, though.
Yeah. Though we recently passed that point in season 2 in the uploads, the Idiot's Lantern, which actually, weird fun fact, was the first episode we ever uploaded to YouTube.
Whoa. Wow. See, look at the randomizer providing more sponsorship details for its sponsor, the Pull to Open podcast, just by bouncing off a time-locked episode. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for the shout-out, randomizer. Thanks for the reminder.
Second spin at the randomizer. Here we go. We're shaving 1 second off the countdown. It's 3, 2, 1.
Unstable!
297. We're in Jody.
Time locked. Bam. Ascension of the Cybermen. Oh, this is happening too often.
Wow. Okay.
We might have to create a new system at some point.
I know. We're going to have to take out the time locked episodes, but
there's so much fuel that we're using here.
We're using up all the time potential. We are angels ourselves.
I think this is our third countdown, so hopefully third and final. Now one more second off. 2, 1.
Run, you clever boy.
261. We're still in New Who. It definitely wants us to be a New Who.
And it is the Zygon Invasion and
Zygon Inversion.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. It's time for some more Capaldi.
Yeah.
And Clara.
It fell back on its favorite doctor when it was like so frustrated. Like, guys, that one. Oh, well, fine. Have some more Capaldi.
It's definitely balancing out all of the run of classic Who that we had a while back, where we couldn't escape to New Who, and now we can't escape from New Who.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Obviously, brings back a classic monster. It has sort of one of those huge Capaldi speeches.
It does. First thing I remember.
Fits into a lot of New Who continuity, so it's got a lot of things going for it. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Good choice, randomizer. I definitely didn't feel too great about this particular set when it first came out, apart from the Capaldi speech. So it's nice then being forced to take another look. Pretty interesting.
Absolutely. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening and joining us on our journey where we really tried not to blink, or rather we did blink in that we talked about it all the time and hopefully mined as much as we could have out of it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, which is what we are, please do. There's probably a button somewhere, and if you're watching us on YouTube, there's some kind of thing somewhere to turn on notifications. I think it's a bell. That's a good thing to punch, smash. To completely
smash subscribe button without blinking.
If you have a second, go ahead, leave us a review. Go ahead and put the title of your favorite episode into that review in emoji form. We'd be happy to read both the review and the title out on the podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, Overcast, Stitcher, all the places you can find us. Thanks so much to Martin West for a good chunk of our music. Let us know what you think of the podcast wherever you can find us. Oh, we're on social. That's what I wanted to say. We're at Pull to Open on TikTok, Pull to Open 63 on Twitter and Instagram. Drop us a line, say hi, do all the things, and we will talk to you next time where we talk all about the Zygons.
Yes, and in the meantime, there we go. Watch out for statues, everyone.
All right, guys. It's been fun. Take care.